Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM. Connecting Highline and our region. Share your story. Our Highline Voices, history, cultural heritage, art, performances, contemporary, pop culture. We are very motivated to provide a vibrant community museum and authentic social gathering place. It truly takes a village to raise a museum. Despite the challenges, our daily inspiration is our eagerness to build a stronger and more connected community. This museum is from the community to the community. Our passion is for our visitors to have access to a broad spectrum of information sources and cultural perspectives. Our Highline Voices.
Hi, everyone. This is Nancy from the Highline Heritage Museum. And today we have Eric with us. I'm going to let him introduce himself and share a little bit more about who he is. We are happy to continue to do this work. It's interesting. This is new to us, and we are learning a lot. The more we're doing this work on allowing people to share the stories, the more meaningful things are becoming, because we go deeper, and it's not just sharing a photo or sharing a document. It's actually hearing the person speak, and it's a pleasure to do that, to be able to record it and to share it with you. So this interview is going to be a short one. It's going to be only half an hour, 30 minutes, but I think we'll make it. We'll make it. And so I'm going to, first of all, thank you, Eric, for allowing us to do this interview with you. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And then I'm just going to let Eric just share who he is. I mean, who we are, all of us just listening to him as to who he is as a person. And we go from there.
Okay. Eric Mathison. And, the Mathison family has been in Burien, the Highline community, since 1942. I grew up on 5 acres in Burien, northeast Burien, which is now Mathison Park. So maybe we should start with Mathison Park and Mathison, the 5 acres. I'll try to go quickly. My mom was orphaned at the age of 8. Her mother died of the Spanish flu, what was called the Spanish flu back there, which was like COVID. She was sent out to Washington State from Illinois, and was raised by an alcoholic aunt, very poor. My father was immigrant, or the son of immigrants from Norway, and they had a dairy farm in Snohomish. So they both ended up at Washington State College, WSU it is now, and met and fell in love. My dad graduated 1929, 1930, and he got a job in New Jersey at Bell Labs, which is kind of like, being hired by Google, Microsoft, a big break for this poor farm boy. And my mom decided she couldn't live without him. So she moved back there, and they got married, and everything was great. The American dream for these 2 poor people. But it was the Great Depression. So he got laid off, had to come back to WSU. He got his master's degree in electrical engineering, and during the Depression, the only job he could get was repairing radios. And so he repaired radios, and they moved to West Seattle, and and he worked at Perry West Appliances in downtown Burien. And so finally he got a job at Boeing. He decided that's where he wanted to work. And in 1942, they decided to move to the country, which was Burien. And, I know this is a long story, but to illustrate why it was so important for them to have those 5 acres of woods. This is the reason. So I was very fortunate to grow up on 5 acres. as my mom always said, the trees are the view. We were about 50 feet, I think, from what is the highest point in Burien, but we were surrounded by trees. She let my dad do a little bit cut so we could see Mount Rainier, but generally was surrounded by trees. And she was very protective of that. I remember she would go out in her bathrobe in the morning when they were cutting back the trees from the power lines, and she said, "Now you don't cut so closely." And meanwhile, the kids were back there, back in the house, going, "Oh, Mom, come on!" They're embarrassing us. So anyway, and then so that's where we played in the woods and in the dirt pile. She always said, "Oh, go out and play." So we had this dirt pile, and we'd be playing there. And every once in a while, some big Cadillac would come down the driveway, and it was real estate developers trying to take our piece of paradise away from us. But nothing happened. Nothing happened. And so after my mom died, he married my mom's best friend, which I guess something that happens. And she had talked to my mother every day, so she knew how much my mother loved this land and what was important to her. So Nina Mae, my stepmother, was looking at the property taxes one day, and very high, and she said, "Oh, well, let's donate this to the city of Burien." And they stayed on as caretakers, and city of Burien, was just amazed, that they didn't even have to buy the land, and it was just donated. So Mathison Park, we're so happy that we have this place for the community, and people can actually walk in the woods. Part of it is woods, part of it is play equipment and all. So I know this is a long story.
No. This is perfect. I know you, Eric, for several years now, probably in the last 18 years or so. I mean, I know that you might not think it has been that long, but I know you that long.
I've been retired for 10 years and, covering the Highline Museum.
Yeah.
I met you back then.
Yeah, I've been with the institution more than 18 years. And so I know that it's been that long. But yes, even throughout the years, I have not been able to sit down with you and chat. And so this is my very first time when I'm actually seeing you, talking to you, even all these years is the first time, and it's a joy to do that. I know that we have a lot of your stories through 7 Stories. And so I know that has been that people have been able to hear you and get to know you through your stories. But to have that personal connection to the space, to the land, you sharing the same last name as the park, something that hundreds of people are enjoying. And it's a legacy that your family is leaving behind, because it is part of your family when that came along. And you were talking about the progress of time, your mom going out and being mad because of the, electrical cables. And there's a lot of stories in the area that talks about that. And one of those cases is the Moines Memorial Driveway. That's one of the reasons where all the trees got caught up because of the electricity or the disease or other factors. But there's a lot of stories around about, the impact on progress in the communities. This is your hometown. This is your space. I'm only here kind of pushing everyone to tell this story, but this is you. And no, I'm just glad that people get to know you more and get to connect not only the last name, but also the face to it, because I know the last name, they will recognize the park. And so I'm learning from you right now. I'm chatting with you. So tell me more about what makes you.
So right down from where we lived, the last year of when I was in grade school, 6th grade, I moved from Sunnydale to Sunny Terrace. and that's because the area was growing so large, so fast. I'm sure you've heard about that, how baby boom and all that. I'm a baby boomer. So anyway, so Sunny Terrace, it didn't last very long, but my mother was very active in the Highline community, and one of the things she was most active was mental health and getting the a mental health center here, which was at the old Sunny Terrace School. And after a while, when they built a new building and they had a dedication, they named the entire campus of the Highline West Seattle Mental Health Center, Burien part, for my mother, the Burien Mathison campus.
Wow.
Highline Mental Health Center, Highline West Seattle Mental Health Center. So I never, as a sixth grade student, thought that my school would be named after my mother.
Wow.
And it's it's really something nothing you think of. She was, boy, what can I tell you? She was active in everything. She was a housewife, but that meant volunteering in the community, Burien Arts Association. I think she was the first treasurer. And what I was really excited about, in 1969, Burien Woman of the Year. And actually, so in 2014, I was named Burien Citizen of the Year, which I was very humble to get that, but because and that was basically my work at the Highline Times. But and so one of the things I covered was there was at the Burien Community Center, there was an exhibit of outstanding women of the Highline community, and my mother was named one of them. So
I remember that. I actually curated the exhibit.
Yeah. So that was great. They weren't very good at family planning. My oldest brother is 17 years older than my young sister, and then I'm the fourth, the youngest boy. And so she ended up being in the PTA for an astounding 40 years. You can believe that. So, and then my dad, was very active at Lake Burien Presbyterian Church with building and grounds. Worked as a Boeing engineer, flight test supervisor. My brother Phil was a chemistry teacher and a tennis coach at Glacier and then Highline. And then after he retired, he did that was tennis coach assistant at Mount Rainier. So a lot of people knew him. And actually, he's in the Highline High School Athletic Hall of Fame.
Wow.
So the whole family, that's the thing, the whole family, has been very active in the Highline community. And, I was kind of looking for a career change. So in my 50s, I became editor of the Highline Times. So again, I moved sort of back to Burien. And I think, there's no records, but I think I might have been the second longest tenured Highline Times editor. So I got involved in the community here. And, looking back at the community, of course, when I was growing up, I said, looking back, I said, it was all homogeneous and, but then, thinking about it more, there were, kind of darker skinned kids that kind of got in trouble, seemed to get in trouble more with the school, and more disciplined. We were kind of afraid of them and call them rinks. There was rinks, which were kind of the juvenile delinquents, and there was squares, which I was, and then there was the socias, the sociable people, the people from Normandy Park, the ones who were class president, things like that. So anyway, so I was thinking about this, and so these dark-skinned kids we called them Italians.
Hmm.
And that just shows, how stupid this whole discrimination is, because the newest group comes in and they're discriminated, and then, they form into the community. So,
Yeah.
and also, my best friend in 5th and 6th grade had a white father, but he had a Japanese mother. And, I thought, it's just a war bride situation, which I'm sure it was. But, I never thought of him, he's different, he's different, just another kid. So,
Yeah.
and I think you guys have interviewed Paul Caruso, which
Mm-hmm.
was pretty much the only identifiable kid.
Yeah.
He was Korean, lived right next to Sunnydale School.
One of the first of all, I'm gonna do it per segments now. You talk about your mom and the influence and how strong her voice is throughout many different areas, through the hospital, through the park, or your family, and then I remember that exhibit many years ago, and so it's an honor to interview you and mentioning her again, and then recognizing that the whole family has been really active in the community, like you said, and your father, and with the building the church, and then your brother. I mean, it seems like you guys have like arts and community engagement in schools, and then your journalism, and so you have you really cover a lot of ground in the community, and so it is wonderful to hear that that part of your family and how influential you have been with each other, and then also in the community.
And I should mention Leona, my sister-in-law, Phil's wife, and she was a longtime teacher at a short time at Sunnydale. She had to leave because she was pregnant, 5 months.
Wow. Oh, God.
And so afterward, after her kids were raised, she went back to Seahurst, and she was a elementary school teacher at Seahurst. So she's well known in the community too.
Yeah. And so that's what, see, another family member who is really active in the community, and it's just really, really nice to see that. It's inspiring. It's an inspiration to hear and to see you going through all those experiences. Now, going back to diversity, and going back to, this is a very sensitive topic in our community in many different ways. And it's just as you imagine, I've been in the curator collections for many years, and before being the director. And then I knew I'm walking into a space where the environment is a lot different. It's not, even in the museum field, for many years, I would go to museum conferences, and I would be one of the few people of color in the space. And so, in many areas, I felt that, that the division in many ways. And then throughout the years, I also had a lot of microaggressions towards me. I mean, I've been getting a lot of punches, and then I'm just like, this is not about telling my story. It's about me finding ways to tell your story. And going back to something that I would like to share that with everyone. One, this is no LA. This is New York. This is not Miami, where we have many generations already in a transition of adjustment on immigration and diversity. So this is literally something that we're just facing in this generation within the last 30 years or so. And so, I mean, I know that historically in the Highline area, we have before World War II, we do have some diversity, but because of a lot of Japanese American families really were pushed away from this area. And then we're talking about the redlining. Yeah, it's a topic that we never, ever talk. It was redlining was implemented in the area. Maybe not officially, maybe not with that clear statement as I'm saying, and who knows how people will react to it. I apologize if you react to it, but it is something that it took place. So we're talking about, World War II, and then redlining, and then the mass immigration taking place. And it's not just people of color. We're talking about this social economical boom that took place. I mean, we're right next to Seattle. So there's a big, there's a small community next to a giant city. And then it's not just a giant just because it's a big city. No, it's because when you think about globally, we're at one of the most faster growing cities, Seattle right there. And so we are dealing with a global issue here. It's not just a small town mentality and big city mentality. It's a global situation. And what is interesting, once again, we are not LA, we are not New York, we are not any other of those big cities that already have many generations in adjustment. That did not take place here. And so what we're facing is a huge cultural shock, either from long-term residents and pioneer families. And so when this is your home in a way, it is your home. And then you have the new immigration taking place, not necessarily globally, but also from different parts of the planet, different parts of the country, and just once again, getting attracted by the economic and job opportunities that they will have with these new big corporations in the area. And so it's a topic that is always, like the big elephant in the room, and every gathering that I have gone through many, many years. And me, one of the few people of color, is just, how do we address this? How do we make sure that this is not about you versus us or us versus you? This is not about, oh, I need to defend, I need to protect, I need to attack. This is more about, okay, this is a reality. We are right here. How do we deal with it? Like a marriage, when you have an issue, then, you can have your position and have a fight on your position and make sure that your argument is clear. But then your spouse is not going to, if your spouse is not ready to listen, if it's not ready to talk, if it's not ready to acknowledge the situations, you don't go anywhere. You just stay there. And I know this is your time. This is your space, and I'm talking way too much. I apologize for that.
Oh, no.
But I just wish that we have a longer time to talk about this, because it has always been an issue that I have not been able to truly vocalize in public. And this is something that I hope that through conversations and through programs and everything that we do here is a representation of that, of opportunity to dialogue. This is your space. I'm going to close my mouth. Tell us more about you.
Well, I mean, this whole thing about people coming in is so stupid because, I was my grandparents were from Norway. And, when I was a kid, the big program that we loved, children's program, was Stan Borison, who was, Scandinavian. And, he would do these, I guess we would consider them, terrible stereotypes of Scandinavians, but because we were already so ingrained, we thought they were funny, and we kind of, liked it, and we were proud, to be Scandinavians, Norwegians, and all, and and then you did. There was a lot of Japanese here, at least the truck farms, and Italians, as I said. The Vaca pumpkin farm, I can't forget the name of the ones that had the restaurants, but and so now the a lot of Latinos and Latinas, and so it's just we should embrace it. My wife and I lived in Mexico, Oaxaca, which was an expat community. And, people coming down to visit us would always want us to take them to an authentic Mexican restaurant. But, the only people down there that could afford to go out to eat in restaurants, actually that's restaurants, not, on the sidewalk or whatever, cooking, were the expats. And so I don't think there really was any authentic Mexican cooking down there. And I think but a lot of people from Mexico have come here and started restaurants. So I would say that maybe there's more authentic Mexican restaurants in Burien than
yesterday I was, it's not going to be coming in the air until later. I think until a lot later, but I was interviewing Eric Nielsen. He's a director of the Nordic Museum, and we were having exactly some of those discussions about the Scandinavian culture within the region, and then cultural identity, and how do different groups how each other influence each other. And so, like I said, I just had that interview less than 24 hours ago. And so a lot of that content of the Scandinavian communities in the region is really fresh in my head. And I wish that I think you enjoy that interview. But once again, this is about you. And so your family made a huge contribution to the community in many different ways in different sectors. And I think, let's just go for it. Let's just go as even 20 more minutes into the intro. I know I got this other thing, but you are more important, and I would like to acknowledge and respect. I respect you and your family so much that I do want to make sure that you are a priority in the space that we're creating right at this moment. So, Eric, as a Highline Times, you were part of, after you retire or you changed careers, you went into this field, and you're exposing yourself to the community elements in many different ways. What are one of the lessons that you learned in that position?
Lessons. Well, because I grew up in Burien, I saw the change, the if you want to call it the ups and downs, whatever. When I was growing up, the baby boomers, I'm not sure the exact statistic, but it was something like, for a period there, every 15 minutes, a new classroom was being built. And there's that famous picture from Look magazine from Lake Burien School, where, I don't know, I would think the museum has it. But,
yeah, it's on display. It's on the display. We had the photo. Oh, that end of the cover of the magazine is, and I think it's Times magazine, actually.
Well, it could be I don't know.
Or Life magazine. Yeah.
It was Life and there was Look. I don't know.
Okay.
But anyway, so, and I'm not sure exactly which it was, but they had, I think, what was supposed to be the full capacity of the school. The kids were looking out the windows of the school building, and then the rest of the students were down about equal in number, were down on the lawn, and that's how much overcapacity that was. And so, part of the problem with building these schools so fast was, they had to they got architects from California. So it's like, oh yeah, let's put flat roofs on the buildings. What do you mean it rains in Seattle? Who ever knew that? Certainly they didn't know that in California. So, 40 years later, when the buildings were getting mold, and we had to build new ones, people would say, "Oh, I've been in my house 75, 100 years, or my house is 75, 100 years old." And it's fine, it's fine, but they didn't realize about these flat roofs, and so it was very hard. And this was part of my period as an editor of the paper, to get people to agree to the bond issues and build the schools. And also when I was a kid, we had a lot of businesses, a lot of department stores. Dad and lad, fathers and sons, men's clothing, male clothing, and Bells of Burien, I'm sure, talked a lot about that, and so Joe Jaffe shoes. So you could do all your shopping here before South Center, and so to get over that and understand what it is. And another thing, when I was a kid, Carl Jensen was a superintendent. And this was a great period, and he helped found Highline College, helped Camp Wasco, the outdoor camp, and he was actually named the Citizen of the Century by the Highline Times. And then his poor successor came in, and they started building freeways, and there was a recession, and probably the second runway, and so I felt sorry for him because, his predecessor was this revered guy, and he had to deal with, these problems.
The we do have the photo. The school that you're talking about is right in the exhibit. So if you're curious, you want to see what photo he's talking about, come and see it in the exhibit. too. Roger Price, he is working on a timeline. We have the exhibit, the Highline School District exhibit, but on the bottom part of the exhibit, you'll see these reading rails that are empty. And so on that one, he's going to be concentrating on really doing this really simple timeline of when other schools open and close. And yes, when you look into the graphics, it is the concentration of opening of the schools and closing are like first is the opening, like there was a lot of that, and then changing later in the years to actually closing. It was also big numbers of schools closing and almost in the same time. And so it's very interesting to see how the demographics change and how that impacted in that. And then you're talking about the the actual architecture of the buildings. And sure, I mean, this is interesting. And I think the FF region has a very signature architecture, and there's a reason for why that is. Like, for example, I grew up in Mexico City, and we don't have triangle-shaped routes at all. It's all flat. And when you're flying into the airport, and you see all the routes are completely flat. And so, yes, that was one of the first things I noticed when I was flying in here for the first time. Like, oh my goodness, it's a different format. But going back to the to Carl Jensen. Once again, I'm not from the area, but I've been with the collections for such a many years, processing them and spending hours and hours and hours on these collections that I am attached to it, knowing the way you are, because this is your stories, but I am attached to it because I spent hours and invested hours on taking care of that. And I hope that the next generation of people working in the museum will actually continue to take care of those stories. So Carl Jensen is a really interesting person in the Highline School District. Okay. And so you're mentioning a lot of really good names. You're talking about your family, you're talking about him, you're talking about the different changes that you've seen in the Highline area, especially with the schools. And I don't know, it just feels like this is just a little tip of the iceberg of how much information you have on you. Okay. So we have 15 more minutes. And so tell me something different, something else about the area or about you.
Well, the ebb and flow of the Burien community, the baby boomers and all these department stores and everything, and that went away to South Center. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a possibility we could have got South Center at, where the town square is now, but that, I probably wouldn't have liked that, but
there was a project that a high school student did, but she did amazing. There's a little tiny book here in the collections where it talks about exactly that, the transition of the local business and then why they moved into the South Center. There's a history behind that we also research. But as we were going through this, one of the interesting things of why it was so popular, the South Center was, you want to go shopping, you don't have to get wet. You want to go shopping, you don't have to deal with cold and wind. And why? Because the mall offer that. The idea of going from business to business without getting wet, without getting cold, so there was a lot of the environmental factors too. Because there was, before the South Center, this was the town to come and buy things. Yeah. There was a very, very commercial district and yes, everything changed. You can see the dramatic changes in the community when everything went down to, not everything, but when the mall opened up. But one of the things, I'm only picking up a few factors here. There's way more content to this story, but one of the interesting things that got my attention is just how convenient that was, how the novelty of, if it was in the winter time, it would be lighted for going from one business to the next business. You don't have to deal with snow, well, unless you're comfortable driving, but at least, having like super wet, dark afternoon, you can actually go in and buy things. And so I grew up in a generation where it's already there. Super malls, the malls are already in, so it's established. There's no novelty to me. But in that generation, it was a big deal. It was a big deal on how you do your shopping experience and how you have everything congregated. Once again, the congregation was already taking place in Burien here, but the environmental factors, they really play a thing in there. Yeah. Do you still have a lot of friends or people that own business from the period here?
Well, no, not really. um, we knew them. That we'd go in there and all, I think somebody who owned well, actually the drugstore right across the street here. There was two drugstores, one here at the museum site and one over there, and I would. When I went to Sylvester Junior High and also Highline High, I would walk from the schools and I got my haircut, at Bruno's shoe repair. The shoe repair was in the back, and then there was some barber shop, and then so I'd walk through. I'd make a real tour, and I'd walk up one side of the street. Highline Pharmacy was another big, I think, where the train store is now, and the Highline Times building was there, and the bank, the Brook Bank, which is still there, and but they had these guards that were old men guards that must have been 50 years old or so, 40, 50. They seemed old to me, and actually I would stop at Ambaum, because that was the old Burien. It was kind of it wasn't the kind of whatever the foodie mecca, foodie crafts mecca it is now, the touristy, if anything. And then I'd walk back down the other side, and then I'd get a chocolate shake at Lou's, which is at the corner there at first, and and 152nd. And this one was supposed to be safer than the one in White Center. We heard that over there in the White Center Lou's, they would they would have fights with the tire chains. Who So anyway, yeah, White Center was kind of an alluring place, because it was a little more dangerous. And anyway, so then I'd walk home, and so that was a fond memory of Burien. When I first became editor or reporter or co-editor, I was kind of a co-editor with Ralph Nichols for a long time. The community was kind of beaten down. There was a third runway was coming in, and I covered that a lot. That was a big story that we covered, and the switch to the town square.
Yeah.
And they finally got this town square built, and then we had this great recession. It was just, but now I think it's coming around. It's coming around, and these other buildings, these skyscrapers.
Yeah.
My mother would never believe, the skyscrapers in Burien. So it changes, but the thing is that there is an ebb and flow, and you just have to sort of go with it. And I think now, when the neighborhood, when Burien was kind of ripped apart, 509 and 518. Kind of split up neighborhoods, and Burien's really lucky that there's been such a controversy about, or such slow growth on 509, because it's supposed to go right to I-5, and so the idea is to have all these trucks from the industrial area of Seattle drive down 509 and connect, on 5. But so for, I don't know now, 20, 30 years, Burien's had its own private freeway, 509, which isn't really that crowded. And so we should feel lucky about that. But yeah, so I think when I started out at the Highline Times, the neighborhood's kind of at the Burien community was kind of at a lower point where, a third runway had been forced upon them and broken up by freeways, and the schools, instead of building schools and all that, they were being shrunk down. And I think we're changing. Burien is changing, getting businesses in here. It seems like some of the businesses are kids, martial arts, teaching them martial arts or judo or exercise. And it's so sad that you have to pay people to exercise your kids because, again, I walked a mile to Sunnydale School every day. I was never kidnapped or anything. First grade, we had a bus stop at First Avenue and 146th, bottom. But then they decided that I only lived, like 14 blocks from Sunnydale School instead of 1 mile, so I had to walk the rest. But even walking up and down that giant hill was fun for sledding in the winter. But up at I got exercise, and of course my mom always said, go out and go out and exercise, go out and play.
Like I got my own daughter. She's almost 17, and so she's this. That is true. Everything changes. And I'll come back to the term of change and what that means too. The concept of why are the kids not working out today? Well, because you are more aware of the madness out there. I myself, I've been I have people trying to kidnap me 3 times and chase me, even as a grown-up woman, chase me around in cars. And so the realities of crime, it is true. It's not just out of a TV. It is actually something that happens. And so that's one factor. 2 is that it was not so much of that distinction between commercial areas and residential areas. And so now you do have a more distance of going from point A and B and C. And then also mothers work now. I mean, you have all these mothers that they are not staying in a home as much. Now they drop the kids at school and then they go to work and then we make it happen. And so even with that routine, you had to adjust to the lifestyles that, you keep moving forward. Changes. I would like to ask you a question before we end. I would like to challenge you with this question. Tell me one thing that doesn't change in life. One thing that doesn't change in life.
In life?
Yeah, my daughter asked me that question when she was probably 7 years old. And that's when it haunted me. But I'm going to like to see if you can come up with an answer.
Oh, boy.
Something.
That's a curveball. Well, I guess, people that are close to you, that it changes who the people are, people are dying, people are getting Alzheimer's, so for losing them one way or
another.
There's a challenge that that you're growing older, so you're going to change too. So but there's always people. They may change, but there's always people who love you, maybe like you, and that never changes.
No, I've been for many, many years now, I've been trying to find an answer to answer my daughter back and say, gotcha, I got one thing that hasn't changed. No, everything changes so far that I have been. All the way from a house, if it's been more than 100 years, you see the deterioration, all the way from the planet. You see the geology changing constantly, all the way from our biology as a human beings, all the way from the social, political, economic structure that where we live in, the influences that we all have. So there hasn't been one area that we don't evolve, we don't adapt, we don't change, we don't progress. And so there is this, and I'm really fascinated by my daughter asking me that question, and then how some people say, well, we want things to don't change, and especially in this field, like when they want to they have that nostalgia. I honestly, I'm in my mid-40s. I wish I can be in my 20s. It's just like not change at all, but no, life, it is what it is. And the concept of having the wish of retaining memories, a wish of keeping what we used to have. I mean, our parents continue to grow old, or the businesses continue to move on, our children gets older, our buildings get older, as we get older, and the concept of retaining something that we want, I think it's beautiful, because that means that we're cherishing those memories, we're cherishing what we used to have. But then I also hope that as you cherish the past, that you can embrace the present, and like also let's enjoy the present. Let's enjoy what else life has to offer. Now, I'm not saying that life is perfect. No, life it can kick you and punch you and do all kinds of things, but it's still you have the option to say, okay, there are times and places for everything. And right now, the ability of sharing a space with you is amazing. So, we are up. Our time is up, but I would like to let you close up. Any last comment or something that you'd like to share to the public?
Well, what you said about life is more dangerous now. I don't know if that's quite the way you put it, but yeah, because I remember, when I first went to Sylvester Junior High, from 6th to 7th grade, and going to this small Sunny Terrace school, we were on the boundary. So my 6th grade class, the kids went to 3 different junior highs, Sunset, Puget Sound, both not there anymore, and Sylvester. And so, I went and, to Sylvester, and it was kind of hard to adapt to, going to junior high, and being a square, I had to do, learn how to be a little cooler. But anyway, and so I would come home and talk about mother's being home, she would take us over to Evergreen Tennis and Country Club, where the airport is now, and we'd go swimming, and that kind of comforted me. And at the Highline Times, I also covered the school board, and I heard this story about this kid was complaining or was worried because his sister was being harassed on her way home from Sylvester.
Yeah.
And he didn't know what to do. And like me, he went to his parents to find the solution. They said, oh, well, why don't you just kill him,
Whoa.
So times have changed,
Whoa.
So,
that was dramatic.
You're right that times have changed. But, you take the good with the bad. I think there was something to be said for, a more diversified, interesting community, which is what we have now. Things back then were great. We were all, kind of, well, not all, but pretty much middle class, or, we go through high school, and the kids on the college track maybe would go to college. They'd have parents who were Boeing engineers like me, or they'd have, ones who worked at Boeing as a machinist, and they made a nice, cooler life. And we didn't have to worry about income inequality that much. It was, people who didn't go to college, people who didn't have post high school education, they could get a good job, live a good life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sad now.
Like I say, it changes, and then scars and wounds that we all have in the community in many different ways, all the way from a Native American community, to all the different generations, is something that makes us reflect, something that makes us learn, and hopefully makes us a better person as we continue to be exposed to those experiences and changes. I think that is the topic of this today. Organically, this is our changes on local history, changes in how we see things. And once again, thank you so much for allowing us to interview you. I hope this is not the last time. I do hope the first or the last. I do hope that, well, this is the first, but I don't want you to be the last interview. I would love to chat with you. I think there was a very interesting conversation that was not expected to talk about diversity. And I was going to be talking more about you and your story, but tapping into that clarification. Diversity is not, to me, is not just ethnic diversity. We're talking about genders and ages and sexual orientation and religion and disabilities and everything that makes us you. So that, to me, that's diversity. And so having those dialogues are great. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And I hope that he likes to be here again with us to share more really cool stories. If not, you can also enjoy Roger. I know that he will actually also provide a different perspective because he was born and raised in this area. But yeah, but it was a pleasure having you with me today and with us. And thank you.
Well, thank you for having me.
Okay, bye everyone.
Our Highline Voices, 106.5 KQWZ LP FM.
We envision ourselves sitting at a round table where no one is the leader and stories are heard respectfully, regardless of gender, age, sexual orientation, disabilities, or ethnicity. We want to embrace our differences and similarities. We are creating a place where visitors can connect with the stories and each other. Our mission is we collect, preserve, and tell the stories of the Highline region and its people. We want to extend our mission outside the walls of the museum. Our Highline Voices represents us all, honoring our past, celebrating our present, and uniting to cultivate our future. This project allows us to reach out to demographics who might be unable to visit the museum. People with disabilities, low-income families, people who don't trust museums, and more. In partnership, we are launching a locally programmed new radio station at the museum, featuring recorded and live Highline's heritage, history, culture, arts, and more. Are you interested in sharing your story? Email director@highlinemuseum.org.